Hey, Joe here. Welcome back to part 2 of this little stock plugin Showdown series. In the last video, if you haven't seen it already, there'll be a link below. I showed you my drum mix using some fancier plugins that have emulations of analog pieces of gear. Now I'm going to try mixing the same drums using only the stock EQ and compressor in Studio One. And then in the next video, we'll compare the two and see who wins. So first, let me come in and just get rid of all the plugins. Remove you. That got rid of most of them. Let's remove that. Okay, we are, shoot, I got rid of one too many. Let's do that. I got rid of my mix bus plugin, which I need to stay the same. All right, those are gone. EQ is gone. Okay, now we are good to start. So in the last video, I rendered my, I'm calling it fancy drums. My fancy drums are rendered here. And then when we're done mixing here, I'll render the stock drums to another track. And then we can go back and forth and compare between the two. All right, so here is the drums with the music. So I can't, the only problem with doing videos and tests like this is there's no way for me to mix the drums for the first time twice. So I've already mixed these drums. I already know what I want to do to them. So I'm probably going to end up mixing it very similarly, which will help for the purposes of this video. But you'll never get my first impression and first instincts if I have to do it twice, right? So we all get that. But let's pull in some plugins here. So first thing I'm going to do is EQ and compress the actual drum bus itself. That's, if you've never heard me refer to this, it's called backwards mixing, or Graham Cochran calls it top-down mixing. Just this idea of if I can get the sound at the bus level really close to how I want it, I don't have to do as much processing on the individual elements. So that's what we're going to go for. So here is the EQ. Let's listen again first. So general rule for me, if there are problems that need to be EQ'd out, I'll EQ them first. If I generally like the sound, I'll compress it first and then see what it sounds like and do some EQing after. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'll put a compressor here first in the chain, and this is just a run-of-the-mill standard old compressor. And let's dial in something nice. So 30 millisecond attack feels right. We'll go about the same on the release. A little higher than 30 maybe. And let's go 4-to-1. That just arbitrarily feels nice. And I'll pull the threshold down and see what we get. Okay, so that feels pretty good. I ended up actually making the release faster, which gave me a little more room sound immediately after the snare hit. The snare is getting hit the hardest here, and that makes sense. That feels about right. But before and after, let's do that. Yeah, so that feels pretty good. Not a ton of compression. It got up to like 6 or so dB, but I'm digging that. Let's make sure the level is about the same before and after. What's really interesting to me is how different the tone of the drum sounds with this compression, specifically the snare. Listen to it. Before, it's mean, it sounds fine, but then after it's got a completely different tone, almost like there's an EQ there, and we know there's not. This is just compression. So that's why I like to compress before EQ if I'm kind of digging the tones already, to see what it does to the sound. It may fix any EQ problems I was hearing, maybe. It may enhance certain frequencies that need to be fixed. I don't know what it's going to do, but it's always really interesting. Let's take a listen to that again. I'll start without the compression, then I'll turn it on. The kick sounds a little tighter and more professional and mixed, but the snare especially sounds like a mixed snare drum already, or pretty close to it. I love that. So we've compressed our drum bus. Now let's see if we need any EQ. And what I'm going to do, and some people may think this is a horrible idea, they're breaking all the rules. I generally like to cut some mid-range out of drums. The 400 to 500 hertz can be a little boxy. And then I'm going to try to get the kick drum sounding beefier by just EQing the bus here. That sounds crazy, I know, but I think it might work. Boost some low end, get a nice beefy kick drum, then I might not have to do as much on the individual kick. Okay, here we go. Okay, that feels pretty good. I can't get much more low end out of it without making everything feel kind of muddy, so I'm not going to go too far in that direction. But with the boost at like 45 hertz, with a wide boost, it's kind of acting like a shelf. It's giving us a little more low end, feels a little more full, feels like a drum kit, a little cut in the mids, a little boost in the upper mids, just making a little bit of a smiley face EQ curve, but it works on drums a lot of the time. I think it feels pretty good. Let's listen to before and after. I'll start with it off and then turn it back on. Sounds good. I cut that upper mid boost at like 4K, cut it down just a little bit. It's a little too much there, but I'm really digging this. So if you've never done the top-down mixing thing, the backwards mixing thing, it's pretty fun. And if you're lazy like me, it can save you a ton of time. With just 2 plugins, we've gone from this sound to this sound. Whoops. Now, that doesn't always work on every style of drums or every style of music, but I like to try this to start because, hey, if I can get it done in 2 plugins, kind of like Name That Tune, I can mix these drums in 2 plugins, might as well try it. Save myself a bunch of time. Okay, now that we've done this, I want to go in and make sure things like kick, snare, all the individual pieces of the kit are still working. So let's take a listen now. Could use a little more beef out of the kick drum, so let's just try an EQ on the actual kick itself, or the kick bus rather. That may seem over the top and exaggerated, but a lot of times I find we're listening in solo, which isn't how I would normally do it, but I want you to hear what I'm doing. I find that works well in the drum mix. Let's listen. So there's a little resonance there, and we fixed it in the last mix with compression. I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm not really going for much tonal change here. I just want that sound. Listen to what's happening at the end of the kick drum. It goes boom, and then there's that whoosh kind of room sound in the sample itself. And not only is it the whoosh, the high frequency stuff, there's a low frequency whoo that's there. I don't love it, and it's not really something I can EQ out because I want it there for the punch of the kick. I just don't want it there for that remaining few milliseconds where it's whoo. It makes everything feel muddy, and I need to address it here. So I'm going to use, I could use a gate to do that. I'm going to use a compressor with a really fast or really slow attack. So like 100 milliseconds or so, about the same on the release. So the idea is, the compressors, the kick drum sound isn't changing too much. It's just compressing to where that sustain of the kick drum gets changed. So let's just see if we can make that happen. Okay, I made the attack, I made the release a lot longer, like 400 milliseconds to hold it down more. And then the attack, I let it be nice and slow, actually went down to like 150 milliseconds. And I know some of you are screaming at your screen right now, just use a gate. Maybe that's the right solution, but I think this is working. In a perfect world, some sort of transient designer would be great for this. They can actually adjust the sustain of a kick drum. It's insane. I haven't used them much, but I've seen them in use in the wild, and they're crazy cool. I don't have one, so, and it would go against everything we're talking about here of just using stock plugins. But that is a way to do it. The other way to do this would be to use a gate that opens as soon as the kick hits and then closes after a certain amount of time. That probably is makes more sense. I just have a hard time setting up gates to where they work well. This way, I'm not accidentally cutting off the kick drum in certain spots. I know the kick sound's going to come through, and now that sustain has been handled a little bit. And I'm going to put that compressor before the EQ, so I'm not undoing my EQ with that compression. With that being after the compressor, I don't have to do quite as aggressive compression on that anyway, so that's kind of cool. Let's see what that sounds like. It's always a good idea to remove the thing you've added to see if it's actually helping. So while we're listening to this as it is, I'm going to take the compression off and see if it does anything, right? That's a good way to check. You know what? It hasn't really helped it at all. So let's use a gate. I'm going to do the thing I said I should have done to begin with. Let's put a gate on here. So that's an example of, well, we tried. And it's still got that whoop whoop afterwards. So let's see if we can fix it a different way. I will solo the kick, and we will set this up. I'm not going to go into all of how gates work. They essentially open when the signal's present and then close it down when it gets below a certain threshold. Okay, that's opening fine. The attack is good, maybe a little bit faster. We can have a hold. Let's set the hold longer. And then the release can be a little faster, actually. So basically here I'm going for an over-the-top sound to make sure I'm grabbing at the right points. Then I can make it a more soft release so it's not. So this doesn't sound good, but it lets me get in the ballpark. Yeah, that feels good to me. Here's the before and after. It should be pretty obvious. And that's a much better solution. Wish I had done that in my original mix. Let's see how it works in the whole drum mix. Could use a little more EQ. I can't hear it as well now. Yeah, I dig that a lot. Moving on to the toms, they're a little flabby. Let's go here. They just don't, they're uninspiring. So let's go remove a whole bunch of mids on my tom bus. 1 EQ to rule them all. Let's go right there. That already sounds better. Let's get that snap. A little low end. That's too much. Just quick and dirty. Turn them down just to, actually I'll turn the EQ down a little bit. Yeah, that feels good. Let's keep listening. Okay, this room mic is super cool. I want to do what I did in the last one and compress the crap out of it. So let's compress it first and then EQ it to make sure it's not too crazy. There's a lot of low end here, but I want that low end hitting the compressor first and then EQ it out. I think that's what I want. Let's see. Whoops. All right, compressor settings. Let's go pretty quick attack on this. We'll figure out the release later. Fairly aggressive, and away we go. Okay, that's kind of cool. It's got a little bit of a vibe to it. Not as vibey as some of these analog plugins. They add a lot of interesting stuff to it, but we can make that work. Let's throw, and again, this is how I've mixed countless projects and albums because I just didn't have the other analog plugins. I didn't think I needed them, and I don't think I did. Let's EQ this out to make it work a little bit better. Really, emphasis is just to bring out the snare sound and make it sound a little bit like some sort of a reverb. So if we listen to the whole drum kit, that should sound like we added a cool room reverb to it. Okay, it's a lot louder than it was. Let me turn that down. Kick drum's too loud too. Let's pull that down. Getting a little funny kick sound from the overhead. Listen to the kick. It's kind of muffled and just gross. I don't want that there. So on the overheads, I'm going to EQ that out. And let's just look at the snare real quick. It's already getting compressed pretty hard at the drum bus. Let me EQ this just a little bit in context. All right, we're in the ballpark. Let me listen one more time. So try not to mess with the levels too much. I am turning up this drum bus a little bit. The processing we did, I tried to keep it kind of the same volume, but it ended up making the drums a little too quiet. They weren't in the mix as well. So I'm just pushing up the drum bus itself, and I think it's working for me. So So that feels pretty good. Obviously, in a 10-minute, whatever, 15-minute drum mix, I'm going pretty quickly. I'm not spending a lot of time on any one thing, but those are the high points of what I would do using stock plugins, and I think I'm done. I'm going to render this down, and then in the next video, we'll listen side by side, compare the two both in the mix and then just by themselves in solo, and we'll see if we learn anything. And we might, and that'll be great, or we might not, and that'll be great too. By the way, if you want to learn more from me about mixing, check out my 5-step mix guide at 5stepmix.com. It's completely free. Go download it, check it out while you wait for tomorrow's video. All right, that's it from me. See ya.